Hello, welcome to our EVI-Pro Lite training. So today we're just going to walk through a little bit about how to use EVI-Pro Lite and what you can use it for. So just as a quick overview, it's part of the AFDC tool, so that's the Alternative Fuel Data Center, which is run through Department of Energy and some of their national labs. So they put together a lot of different tools that you can use for different projects you're working on, and the EVI-Pro Lite tool is one of those. So what the EVI-Pro Lite tool basically does is that's the electric vehicle infrastructure projection tool. So what it does is you put in how many electric vehicles you want in a certain state or a certain region, and it will tell you how many chargers you need to support those vehicles in the region. So it's really helpful when it comes to planning. If a town is, or like a regional government or COG or something like that, is trying to figure out how much charging infrastructure that they'll need to support a transition to EVs, whether it's the number of EVs they already have in their area or the number of EVs that they're planning on having to reach different goals. It's a really helpful tool so they can figure out what kind of infrastructure they will need. So, perfect. Also, again, feel free to stop me with any questions along the way. I will pull up the tool now. Okay. So this is EVI-Pro Lite. Like I said, it's part of the Alternative Fuel Data Center, AFDC. So it was created by DOE, which is really great. They have such great tools that you can use for everything. What we can do here is it lets you choose, you can either look at an entire state or you can look at a city and urban area. So we can start today by looking at a city or urban area, but it really would work for both. So we'll just walk through an example of, we'll probably do it for the Fairfield region because that's where we're based, but you can do it for any different region throughout the state. So the website's a little slow loading this part sometimes, but that's okay. Okay, so you start by, I think a map should be popping up soon also, or maybe not. I guess I'll just select state. Yes, okay, so I thought there was a map. So there's a map here, so you can just go in and select whatever state you want to be looking at. So obviously we'll do Connecticut. So it doesn't break it down by specific city or region. What it does instead is it does like metropolitan areas. So it's great because a lot of the areas in Southwestern Area Coalition are covered by one of these regions. In Litchfield County, it's a bit tougher because not all of the areas in Litchfield County are part of a metropolitan region, so it might not be covered on EVI-Pro Lite, but at that point you can kind of use like the entire state tool and just maybe break down by population, what percentage of that would be in Litchfield County areas. So anyway, if you're doing it for an area that's covered by one of these metropolitan regions, it can be really helpful. So we will start today with the Bridgeport to Stamford area. And like you can see on the map here, when you hover over one of the areas, it kind of highlights what region that is, so you can see. So there's a few different areas throughout the state. Some are bigger than others, as you can see. So the New York one, I think that only covers a bit of Greenwich and Connecticut, but they kind of go across states. So like the northern part of the state has Springfield or Worcester that stretches pretty far down. And yeah, so it goes through some different big areas in the state. So a few of these are in our region, which is great. So we'll start with the Bridgeport to Stamford one. So one of the things we've been doing is, so Connecticut, the 2025 MOU has a goal of 125,000 electric vehicles in Connecticut by 2025. So that works out to be about 5% of the vehicles in the state that are supposed to be electric by 2025. So when we did a run through in the module back in March for EVI-Pro, we kind of were looking at what is 5% of the total number of light duty vehicles registered in this region, and using that as the number of electric vehicles to support. So there's about 100,000 light duty vehicles in this area. It's really helpful because it does tell you on EVI-Pro Lite exactly how many vehicles there are in the area at the end of 2016, and it'll tell you how many of those are already plug-in electric vehicles, which is great, so you can kind of see where we're at. Obviously, that's about 5 years old now, so there's a lot of updates since then. But yeah, you can also check, kind of unrelated, but if you want to see how many electric vehicles are in any of the towns or areas we're working in, the Connecticut EV Club has their website, a tool, and it tracks information about how many electric vehicles are registered in every individual town in Connecticut. So all of that information DMV technically has to make public. So every year, the Connecticut EV Club formally requests the information and publishes it all on their website. So I think they update that about every 6 months. So it should be updated for January 2021, I'm pretty sure, but they update it fairly often. So if you're ever looking at a specific town and want to see how many EVs there are registered there, you can do that. But for here, if we're looking at a specific region, it does tell us a little outdated, but still a good number to look at. So it looks like there are about 1 million vehicles registered here. So we will do, was that 50,000 is 5%? Yes. Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we will put in 50,000 electric vehicles would be theoretical goal for 2025. Also, do you guys have any questions so far?
No.
No. Okay, cool. And then you just calculate. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty straightforward to work this, and it gives you some good information. So what it tells you is how many workplace level 2 chargers you should have, how many public level 2 chargers, and how many DC fast chargers you should have in the region. So it actually does also tell you existing charger locations. So there are currently 230 plugs for level 2 charging, which is a good amount lower than the amount that we'll need for 2025, but it actually looks like there are more fast chargers than are needed. So in pretty good shape with fast chargers. So that is great. It pulls all of the data about the existing chargers from the A2C station locator, which is another tool that is really helpful for finding charging locations. So yeah, so it's really good, and it just kind of shows you exactly how many you need. So then on the side over here, it kind of tells you some of the assumptions that it uses to make all the calculations, and you can edit some of these. So vehicle mix, it has the plug-in hybrids, the all-electric vehicles, and it asks you about the range on the vehicles. So you can kind of see the breakdown. If we knew more specific numbers on that, we could calculate for that. So for example, if we wanted to not count any plug-in hybrids, we wanted to just count all electric vehicles, we would edit this, and then, so maybe we should have, if we did something like this, just to see what it's like if we change these numbers. And you can recalculate. So yeah, so you can see if you do that, it ups by a good amount the number of chargers you need for each of these, if it's all electric vehicles instead of plug-in hybrids. So changes that a bit. I'll put it back to where it was at though. All right. So you also can go, if you're calculating for hybrid vehicles, you can set if people are going to be using gasoline on those days, if they're going to be fully supported by charging, or kind of what the balance is. So it defaults to partial support, and then you can change it if you want to. And then you can also change the % of drivers with access to home charging. So we've kind of been talking about this in our clarity sessions too, but a lot of drivers of EVs now are people who live in single family homes and can just install a charger there. But as more people have maybe multi-unit dwellings, or people who live in multi-unit dwellings that don't have access to chargers at their home and need to public charge instead, this might change. So you can kind of set that if we think there are a lot of people who only can charge at public charging stations. You can lower this number a bit, and that'll calculate for obviously a few more chargers needed to support those people as well. So yeah. So that's kind of a quick overview of how it works. It has some other information for towns if they wanted, just some tips about how to build up charging infrastructure and what they could do. You can see here, how much do stations cost, some considerations if they're installing charging stations. It also has some contact information. I think that actually directs them to our contact information, your local Clean Cities Coalition. So good tool to have. But yeah, so that's how it works for this. We can also run through it quickly for a state instead of an urban area. And we can do it for the whole entire state. So 3 million, so that's 150,000, I think. And we can calculate for that. So yeah, you can kind of see Connecticut actually seems to be in pretty good shape as far as fast chargers go. It's just level 2 public chargers that there aren't as many of. So yeah, actually for both of these, I don't think it's the case for all of the individual regions of Connecticut that we saw last time that had as many fast chargers as they needed, according to this so far. But I think for certain regions in Connecticut, there are a good amount of fast chargers. So these numbers are matching up pretty well, but obviously 886 is a lot less than 2,200. So a good ways to go in level 2 chargers, especially. So.
Wait, so is the like 3,000 number, is that for, because then is that like that's not the 2 added, is that just, so then would Connecticut have no workplace level 2 charging plugins?
So I think that the reason it doesn't count anything there is because AFDC only tracks public chargers. So some workplace charging is public charging. A lot of workplace charging isn't public charging. It's just open to employees and stuff like that. So as far as I know, like DOE doesn't have like a database of workplace charging. So I think they just don't know what the number of workplace chargers is.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, I think I guess it depends where. I think that a lot of municipalities, they'll have like a charger there, and a lot of times employees will use it, but it's technically open to the public or anyone to use. But then I know like when we had the Hartford on back in the fall for our 12-week program, they're presenting and they have a lot of workplace charging in their parking lots there, but it's only open for employees. So that's not something that we'd be able to track as well. It still means we need a lot of workplace chargers, but it's just harder to figure out where we're at with that one. I think that's the gist of it. There also is this load profile tab, which I actually have not worked with much. Not exactly sure where it brings us. We've mostly used EVI-Pro. Oh, okay. So this is another aspect of the tool. I actually don't think I have used this side of it before. So I am not entirely sure how it works, but we could definitely figure that out and go over it another time. Yeah, no, I've only seen the charging needs side of this. So, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't, like I said earlier, since it doesn't have for specific towns, it's not like we can say, okay, Fairfield, you need this many chargers. But we could say, if we're looking at that number and we're saying like, okay, we have 800 something level 2 chargers and we need like 2,200, like obviously towns are going to need to install a lot more. So you can kind of use it on a bigger scale, or potentially if we were working with like regional organizations, I know we've worked with COGS and stuff before, if they're looking at where chargers are needed. That's another thing to look at. So
Cool.
Yeah. Any questions?
No.
Right. I might stop sharing then. So yeah, this one is definitely more straightforward to use, but can be definitely helpful, especially with like, I know people are trying to pass zoning regulations, and if they're trying to convince towns that we definitely need more EV infrastructure and stuff like that, it's good to have a tool sometimes to show, yes, this is what we need to support the number of vehicles we're going to have, or that we want to have or need to have. So yeah. All right. If that's it, then I think we are all set. We can go ahead and stop the recording.